reform, as I already mentioned.
May I turn to you, Mr. Mikloš? If I follow up your earlier remarks, you basically sort of made a simple division of the region into two groups, and you defined the relatively successful and relatively less successful ones in those terms. Would the big lesson of this crisis then be that you should become like the countries everybody should become like the countries in the first group, that the set of policies you described, which of course fits also with what some of what Mr. Boyta was saying, that's the big lesson in terms of policy, or are there other things you would add in terms of what the implications are for the region, and also particularly for the external institutions like the IMF and World Bank?
Firstly, I think it is important to put question: what is the most important outcome for the future after crisis period? I think the most important is that the world will be different, and the most important difference is that competition will be even tougher and even stronger as it was before. And it is very important, especially for small and open economies, which are vitally dependent on the export, on the attracting themselves for the investors also. Because now we have, and we will have for next years, one of the biggest problems will be overcapacities. This is one of the reasons why competition will be so tough. Which means importance of reasonable policy in this regard will be even higher as it was before crisis. What is the most important? And it is connected with these lessons which I have mentioned. Firstly, how to do in the same time to sustain, or if not sustain, because many of countries, thanks to crisis, are coming to the huge deficits and debt. And the most important precondition of the competition ability is the sound public finance, which means credible monetary policy and tough fiscal policy is crucially important. In the same time, important is to improve business environment in many of aspects of business environment.
You're welcome to leave.
Law enforcement, taxes, and so on and so on. And now the biggest problem is how to do it in the same time, to recover public finance and to improve business environment. For instance, taxes, payroll taxes. Only answer is to structural reforms. If you look at, for instance, aging problem in the Europe, not only in the Central Europe and Eastern Europe, but even more in the Western Europe, and other problems which are structural reforms are only response of this, to have in the same time recovery of the public finance and to have sound public finance, and in the same time improve business environment and to be attractive for the investors. And then everything what Deputy Prime Minister Barbachan mentioned, I think, is important also for countries in our region. Another important problem is how to restructure economy to be competitive for the future, because countries as Slovakia and Central European countries are competitive in the mass industrial production. That's the reason why Slovakia is on the first place in the world by producing cars per capita today. But of course, we want, one of the reasons of this, or the most important comparative advantage, is low wages and low labor costs, that we want to increase the standard of living, and we are increasing, but we are then missing this or weaker and weaker competition ability in this mass industrial production. And because, as I said, the competition, global competition, will be even tougher, we have to promote also restructuring by building infrastructure, including labor force knowledge, including education, knowledge economy, everything connected with this. And this will be very, very, very difficult for every country, even more difficult as it was before. And in my opinion, structural reforms, sound public finance, and business environment improvement is crucially important in this regard. And second question, the role of international institutions in this.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I will have to leave. Sorry.
Mr. Babajan has to go to the IMFC committee.
Okay.
You
Thanks,
are the
Mark.
host, or
Thank
in
you.
addition.
Thank you.
Thanks very much
you.
for joining us.
We will meet.
The role of international institutions in this. On one side, of course, the crisis is global because economy is global. And of course, we need international responses. We need maybe not more regulation, but better regulation. We need to answer these challenges, which are very actual. My experience from the cooperation with the international financial institutions is very, very similar as what Mr. Barbachan and Hrihori said. Very important, and the most important is to have really ownership and strong conviction of what you are doing. And then the role of international institutions is only additional. Of course, these institutions are playing a very important role as the rescue institutions of the last resort in the crisis situation. But if you are speaking about doing necessary economic policy in the country, the ownership and conviction what you are doing is the most important. And one small example, because our cooperation with IMF and World Bank was very good and very positive. I consider this very positive. But we have had also one example of the not disagreement, and it was interesting because it was flat tax. The most well-known reform in Slovakia was flat tax, 19%. As we have been prepared, I was finance minister at the time, and we have prepared this proposal. It was in 2003. Then IMF delegation came and they said, "Oh, we don't recommend it. It's too radical. Maybe it will be necessary to divide for 3 years for the future." And we said, "No, we think it is possible to do it now or nowhere." And we did it, and this is example of the ownership and of the conviction what is necessary to do. I have to say that then afterwards, the IMF said that you were right, and we were mistaken at that time. Unfortunately, you didn't hear us what to do.